Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Goldberg. We're going to get started very shortly. We're having a couple of technical issues, and Lindsay is trying to work them out quickly for you. So just hang in there, please. Have a cup of coffee if you've got some of that, or whatever you're drinking this morning, and we'll get started very shortly. And we apologize for the wait. Okay, I'm hoping you can hear me and see me, and we're going to get started. My name is Jeff Goldberg, and welcome to this morning's session called Increasing Sales in a Challenging Economy. Just so you know who's speaking with you, my name is Jeff Goldberg. My company's name is Jeff Goldberg and Associates. You wouldn't believe how much I had to pay a marketing guy to come up with that. I am a sales trainer, sales coach, sales consultant, and outsourced sales manager. My company does four things really. I train salespeople. Companies like Cisco and Siemens and Aramark bring me in to train salespeople to sell more effectively, to prospect more effectively, to manage salespeople more effectively. I also do one-on-one coaching where I help salespeople solve their problems and move sales forward more quickly to closed. I do consulting work where I come in and analyze problems and help companies sell more effectively. And finally, I manage salespeople for small organizations on an outsourced basis. And this increasing sales in a challenging economy topic is very near and dear to my heart. And right now, we're certainly in a challenging economy for most of us. So why don't we just get going? So the question that I'm getting the most often right now from both prospects and clients and people I'm coaching is, should I be prospecting now? And I think that's a great question to be asking, because we all know we're in the middle of a terrible pandemic that's affected us greatly. There's a lot of racial unrest going on in the country. There's all kinds of crazy things going on right now. And the country's pretty much been closed down for the last 2 or 3 months. So in terms of should you be prospecting now, the first question I have to ask is, what is it that you sell? If you're selling something that's not very useful, I'll change that from not very useful to not fairly essential, then this may not be a good time to be pushing yourself on other people. If you're selling solar panels, that's something that's very useful, good for the ecology, good for energy, but I don't know that I care right now in the middle of a pandemic to be hearing from a salesperson that's selling solar panels, and I hear from them every day. But if you've got something that can actually affect my business, my ability to feed my family, my ability to promote my company, that's actually going to provide a tangible benefit for me, then yes, I absolutely want to hear from you. And not only do I want to hear from you, but I feel you're doing us both a disservice if you don't reach out to me. So the answer to should I be selling now is yes. If you can actually provide some benefit for your prospects and your customers, then yes, this is a smart time to be selling. But then the question becomes, can you do so with empathy? And I think we pretty much all at this point know the difference between sympathy and empathy, but I'll give you a just quick definition. Sympathy means I feel sorry for you. Empathy means I feel with you. It doesn't necessarily mean I feel exactly what you're feeling or that I completely understand it, but I'm attempting to do that. By the way, excuse me, if you have any questions during this presentation, if you just type them into the chat box, we have the lovely Lindsay Doyle who will type them in for me into my phone, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that you've got. So, can you sell with empathy right now? That's a good question, and you better be able to. Every time you're prospecting right now, it's fine to start out with, hey, I'm from Jeff Goldberg and Associates. We're a sales training firm. But before we get to that, how are you doing? And you have to act like you really care, or you should really care. It's even better. But you have to ask questions. How is this pandemic affecting you, your business? How is your family doing? How is this affecting you personally? What could I do to help you? If you don't do that, then you're going to come off like a shark. And the turnaround is coming. It's actually started in some states, and I think we're going to see it progress and progress more and more quickly. But if you don't start acting with empathy now, selling with empathy, then when people are ready to do business with you, whether it's next week, next month, or next quarter, then they're going to remember the people who acted like sharks during this pandemic. And they're also going to remember the people who actually cared. Now, you could either actually care or act like you care, but one way or another, you better come off with some empathy. Because if you don't understand that most people are freaking out right now, then you're crazy. Most people are thinking about things like, am I going to get sick? Is this pandemic over? What if my family gets sick? What if I get sick and can't take care of my family? Will my business be in business next week, next month, next year? What's going to happen? I think just about everybody's thinking that way. So we, when we're selling, better be understanding of that and sell with empathy. I've been speaking to a lot of my clients, and some of them are a little bit down in the dumps. Now, it really depends on what industry they're in, but it also depends on your attitude. I actually participated in a networking group session the other day where our instructions were to break into groups of 4 and have a discussion about where we see the opportunity right now. Where are the possibilities? And I happened to be in a chat room with 3 other people, and none of them saw any opportunity. And I was kind of stunned because I saw opportunities for them, and I certainly see opportunities for me. A lot of it is mindset. If you think there's no opportunity, if you think things are terrible, if you think things are never going to get better, then that's pretty much what shows up for you. If you think there is opportunity, you actually take the time to look for it and find it, I think you'll find it's there. I believe it was Henry Ford who said, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. So opportunity is out there. And I like this Ann Landers quote. And for any of you who are too young, Ann Landers used to be a very popular advice columnist. And Ann says, opportunities are usually disguised as hard work. So most people don't recognize them. The next thing you have to understand if you're going to be selling in a challenging economy is that there's a difference between working on your business and working in your business. And this was taught to me by a very high-priced coach that I hired at one point to help me with my business. The very first thing she taught me was the difference between working in and on your business. So it's very simple. Working in your business, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm delivering a presentation for a bunch of people that I've never met before. Prospecting would be part of me working on in my business. Anything that generates income for me or is likely to generate income is working in my business. If you're an attorney, reading briefs is working in your business. Going to court is working in your business. Speaking to clients, talking to other attorneys, all those are part of an attorney working in their business. But what most of us never take the time to do is work on our business. And there's a big difference between the two. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should not work in your business because that's how we make money. But working on your business simply means this: sitting down and taking the time to think about, how can I do things differently? How can I do things better? How can I do things more efficiently, more effectively? What possibilities are there? And my coach, my very high-priced coach, actually tried to get me to commit to doing this for 5 hours a week, to do nothing other than sitting back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling with my hands laced behind my head, and just thinking, what can I do differently? What can I do better? How can I be more efficient? How can I be more effective? And I refused to commit to 5 hours a week, but I did commit to 3. And it's a little challenging when you first start doing that. Stopping the rat race of trying to make money and actually think about, how could I make more money? How could I do things differently, more effectively, more efficiently? And I found that after about the second or third day of doing this, the first 2 days pretty much grumbling that I was wasting my time, ideas started popping into my head. And things started happening. In fact, I teach a program called Stream of Consciousness Brainstorming, which is all about solving problems and generating ideas. And when you just stop your mind from all the, how am I going to make more money right this second, and doing all those things, and actually work on your business, miracles absolutely can occur. So if you want to be more effective in selling during a challenging economy, start working on your business while also continuing to work in your business. Now, this is something I hate to say, and it's probably something that you won't want to hear, but in almost every economy, the key is to prospect like crazy. I only sell to 3 titles of people: presidents, CEOs, and the global god or goddess of sales at a large organization. I've worked with companies like Cisco and Siemens and Aramark and Citibank and State Farm, companies you know, as well as tiny companies you've never heard of. And I get asked a lot of questions by the people who run these companies because as an outside consultant, I have no skin in the game one way or the other, and they know I'm going to tell them the truth. And the questions I hear most often are almost always questions about, Jeff, how do I increase sales at my company? The tagline in my firm is, we help companies get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And the question I get all the time is, how do I do that? Well, the first thing is I tell them to get their lazy ass salespeople off their rear ends and get them out and meeting with more prospects. And in order to do that, you've got to prospect like crazy, consistently. One of the keys to sales success is prospecting consistently. And when I say consistently, I mean at least a little bit every single day. Because any day that you don't prospect is a day somewhere down the line that you cannot get paid. And I have a long example that I could give you, but we've only got an hour today, so I'm not going to share the whole thing. But it takes me about 4 to 4.5 months from the time I first meet with somebody to the time I get paid. What that means is, if I don't prospect today, 4.5 months from today, I can't get a paycheck. And if I don't prospect tomorrow, 4.5 months from tomorrow, I can't get a paycheck. Now, I own my own company. When the paychecks come in, they go right into my hot little pocket. So I don't need to get paid every day. In fact, I don't need to get paid every week. The truth is, I don't even need to get paid every month, although I certainly like to. I don't like to go a month without getting a check. But when you string a couple of months together, that's when I start getting nervous, because this fall, I'm going to have 3 kids in college all at the same time. So daddy still needs to bring in some money. You've got to prospect like crazy. There's not a ton of low-hanging fruit right now, but there is fruit out there. You've got to prospect in whatever way you're going to do it. By the way, a question that I get all the time is, does phone prospecting, cold calling over the phone, still work? The answer is absolutely positively. Does it work as well as it used to? No. Voicemail changed that extensively. Gatekeepers are better at their jobs, and people are just more busy. But if you know how to do it properly, telephone prospecting does still work. Prospecting time has got to be a part of every salesperson's daily plan, and it should be on their calendar. If you manage a team of salespeople or just one salesperson, make sure you're looking on their calendar and take a look and see where it says prospecting time on there. When I work with a new coaching client, the first thing I have them do is set goals. But the second thing is I have them share their calendar with me so I can see it. And the one thing I never see is prospecting time. We tend to try to fit that in between everything else that we have to do, and it ends up either being the last thing or not at all. Prospecting is one of the true keys to sales success. Now, the next thing you want to do in any economy, but certainly in a challenging economy, is make it easy for interested prospects to find you. What we're looking for is people who are raising their hand and saying, hey, I might be interested in you. So certainly advertising and marketing is one way to do that. Now, I'm not an expert in advertising or marketing. I have people I go to get advice on those things. Although I've done a ton of work training organizations that sell advertising, I'm not an expert in it, but advertising and marketing helps it make it easy for interested people to get in touch with you. I find newsletters are a great way to stay in touch with your prospects and your clients. And while I don't use a newsletter anymore, for many years, I sent one out every single month. If you gave me your email address in any way, shape, or form, no matter what it was, you were getting my newsletter every month. Now, the key to a newsletter is it cannot be a sales pitch. It's got to be something that helps the people that you're sending it to. You can't be, again, a shark about it. I don't like to see newsletters with, we're running a special, or we can help you, give us a call. It should be, mine was always sales information that helps salespeople or sales managers do their jobs better. Also, if you're a good writer, articles. That's a great way to help interested prospects find you. And there are a million outlets that are always looking for great information. You could have a blog on your own website, but there are all kinds of opportunities to do a guest blog for other people, and a million places on the internet that are looking for interesting articles that serve the public. Also, it's great to make friends with reporters. I'm used fairly regularly as a source for a reporter right here on Long Island, where I live, in the name of our 800-pound gorilla newspaper just flew out the window, but it doesn't matter what the name of it is. I get used regularly, and I often get inquiries after my name is mentioned in the paper. Social media, again, I'm not an expert in advertising or marketing or social media, but social media is a great way to help interested prospects find you. LinkedIn, I consider the salesperson's best friend. And I regularly post content on LinkedIn. I've also formed a group on Facebook and LinkedIn for salespeople. These are all great ways to help interested people find you. And finally, speeches. If you are at all decent at speaking, now I'm a professional speaker, so I should be pretty good at it, but speeches are a great way for interested people to find you. The National Speakers Association says that out of every 10 people in any audience you're speaking in front of, one is probably going to be interested in what you've got to offer. So there's a lot of ways you can help people find you, and you should be doing at least some, if not all of them, if you want to make more sales in a challenging economy. Now, of course, my favorite way to get business is referrals. Referrals are the easiest way to close business because, excuse me, because a well-done referral takes you halfway to the sale. Now, one of the keys that I find that salespeople almost never ever do is they don't ask. They don't ask for referrals. And again, I've got a long story that would drive this point home, but we don't have time for the long stories today. But you've got to be willing to say to someone, who do you know that I should be speaking with? And by the way, that's the way I teach salespeople to ask that question. Not, do you know anybody that I should be speaking with, or do you know anybody that needs insurance or advertising or sales training or whatever it is that you're selling? Because that's a yes/no question. What I want people to do is open up their mental Rolodex. And for those of you who are young, that's kind of like your contacts in your phone, except it was paper. I want people, when I say, who do you know that I should be working with? I want them to open up their mental Rolodex and start thinking, oh, who do I know that might need Jeff's services? But you've got to ask people. If you don't ask and you wait for them to refer you, you may be waiting a long time. And that's even true with people who are happy with the product or service that you've sold them. Make it easy for them by asking them, who do they know that you should be working with? And the way I actually teach it is, as you probably know, Bob or Mary, I build my business through direct referrals from people just like you. Who do you know that I should be speaking with? And then you simply do the toughest thing for any salesperson, which is shut up and wait. Networking. If you're not networking, then I think you're crazy. I belong to the same networking group for about 16 years now. It's a rather pricey networking group. It's more expensive than most, but that brings in a higher level of person. And about 70% of my business comes from referrals inside my networking group, because those people are my extended sales force. See, what you don't want to do in a networking organization is end your networking, your brief commercial with, and I'd love to do business with all of you, which we've all heard a number of times. The purpose of a networking group is not to sell each other, although sometimes that happens because we grow to know each other and like each other and trust each other, but that's not the purpose of a networking group. A networking group is there to be your extended sales force, which means you've got to get the people in that group to completely understand what it is that you do, which means your brief commercial better be very simple so they can remember it, so they understand what you do and who you serve. And it's important that they can repeat it to others and that they like and trust you. If they don't like and trust you, then they're not going to refer you just because you're in the same networking group. In fact, I often give speeches at networking groups, and I almost always say, you all seem like a lovely bunch of people. And even though I can't see any of you today, I'm sure you're a lovely bunch of people, but I wouldn't refer a single one of you because I don't know you. If I got to know you, I might be happy to refer you. But who am I going to refer you to? I'm going to refer you to my clients. And after my 3 children and my dog, that's the most valuable asset I have in this world, my happy clients or my past clients. Well, I'm not introducing you to anybody unless I'm convinced that you're going to make me look good, and absolutely that you're not going to make me look bad. So in your networking, make sure you develop relationships of trust with the people you're networking with so that they can help you. Now, the very, very best way to get referrals is to be so darned awesome at what you do that people can't wait to refer you. And this is a conversation I had with my coach. She's not a sales coach, but she's a performance coach. She helps you perform to your utmost. And we were talking about referrals, and I said, well, how do you get referrals? How do you ask for them? And she looked at me like I had not 2 heads, but 3 heads. She goes, Jeff, I never ask for referrals. I consider it rude. And I said, rude? Why would that be rude? She goes, Jeff, the key to getting referrals is to be freaking amazing at what you do. And the fact is, my coach is. She's never once asked me for a referral, but I've referred her a number of times because she's so damn good at what she does. So either be incredibly great at what you do, or make sure that you're asking people and develop relationships of trust with the people in your network in order to make your job easier and get more referrals. The next thing you'll have to do if you're going to sell more in any economy, but especially in a challenging economy, is you've got to understand why people buy. And there is a reason that people buy, and it's very simple, and I've given it to you right on the screen. People buy because it makes sense to buy. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper into that point. I believe we do everything we do because it makes sense to do those things. For example, I put on a collared shirt today. I haven't worn a collared shirt in about a month because I haven't been in front of sales, in front of prospects, other than once or twice via Zoom, but it's mostly been clients that I've been servicing for the last month or so. And I put on a collared shirt to impress you today. If I wore a t-shirt, which is what I've normally been wearing these days, you would think of me differently. In fact, I might have even put on a tie to make myself look even more educated and more professional, but I chose not to. So I did wear a collar shirt though, because it made sense to me to do that because I wanted you to have a certain impression of me. And if I wore a t-shirt or a tank top, God forbid, that's an ugly picture for all of us, you would think of me differently. I didn't eat breakfast this morning. Anybody know why? I'll just tell you. I wasn't hungry. It didn't make sense to eat if I wasn't hungry. Some of you probably did eat breakfast because you were hungry. I walked the dog this morning when I woke up because I knew I wouldn't have time to do this at 8 a.m. because I was going to be speaking with you. It made sense to walk the dog. I also put a bark collar on him because I didn't want him barking during this presentation and annoying you. Also annoying me. It would annoy the crap out of me, to tell you the truth, because he's a little pug, but he has a big bark. So he's got a bark collar on him right now. Now, he doesn't like that bark collar, and I don't really like putting it on him, but it made sense to do that. In other words, we do everything we do because it makes sense to do those things, including buy stuff. So we have to understand why people buy, and they buy because it makes sense to do so. So what we need to do if we're going to sell more stuff is we need to figure out, regarding what we have to sell the prospect, what makes sense to them, which means we've got to ask good questions about that. For example, when I go in to meet with the head of an organization, sometimes it's a president or a CEO or a business owner, sometimes it's a vice president of sales. The thing that I need to figure out is, regarding sales training, what makes sense to them? Now, here's the beautiful key here. What makes sense to somebody regarding what you're trying to sell them is whatever they're doing now. So let's forget sales training. Let's take advertising. If you're selling advertising, for example, when you're speaking to prospects, you have to figure out what makes sense to them regarding what you're trying to help them do, which is not buy advertising. That's just the vehicle. What they're trying to do, because I've done a lot of work in the world of advertising sales, advertising makes the doorbell ring. Advertising makes the cash register ring. So when you're selling advertising, what you need to be asking questions about is, what do you do now to make the cash register ring? What do you do now to bring new prospects into your store or into your business? What do you do to make your current clients buy more from you? We have to ask all kinds of questions that help us understand what makes sense to the prospect. When you start doing that, you're well on your way to selling more stuff in any economy. And you also have to understand not only why people buy, but why people buy specifically from you. And there's only a few reasons. Some things have changed in the last 46 years since I started selling Encyclopedia Britannica. And yes, I'm that old. I used to knock on doors and sell people a $2,000 set of books. I used to have a kiosk in LaGuardia Airport in the Delta terminal. And as people would walk by to their planes, I'd be selling encyclopedias right there. I've sold them at state fairs. I've sold them just about everywhere you can understand. But I always knew from back then and even to this day that people buy from people they both like and trust. Unless you've got what somebody wants and they cannot get it anywhere else, you better be both likable and trustworthy. Otherwise, people are just not going to do business with you. In fact, people will go out of their way to not do business with you if they don't like and trust you, which means we've got to establish a relationship with them. One of the things that quite often happens when I'm observing salespeople in the field or over the phone for inside salespeople is that they never take the time to establish rapport. And we've all heard that word in terms of sales, rapport building. It's crucial. You've got to establish a relationship, and at least you've got to get it started by asking some kind of questions about the person you are dealing with. Now, when I teach selling, I teach a particular way of doing that, and we won't go into that right this second, but you do have to do something. And if all you've got is, hey, nice weather we're having, or how about those Mets, which nobody ever says, you can start with some, nonsensical and not important question, but the deeper you can go with people in establishing some rapport and then building on that foundation as you continue along the path towards a sale is going to stand you in good stead with people. The other thing that we have to understand is that truly, I promise you this is true, most people do not buy on price, they buy on value. Now here's the challenge. Salespeople tend to think that customers buy because of the price. Customers tend to think that they buy because of the price. But the truth is, almost nobody really buys in price. And I know there are exceptions to every rule. And I also know that there are people who will cut you off at the knees for a nickel, but most people won't. And if I was actually having a conversation with you right now, I'd be asking you this: who drives a nice car? And I don't know how many people are on this call right now, but I think there's 30 or 40 or something like that. I'll bet at least one of you is raising your hand right now and saying, yeah, I drive a nice car. And when I do this exercise with salespeople, there's always one or two or sometimes more who can't wait. They get that smug look on their face and they can't wait to tell me what kind of car they drive. Jeff, I drive a Mercedes 550, or I'm driving a Lamborghini. They can't wait to brag at how much. And I love when people do that. So I'll often call on somebody, what kind of car are you driving? And somebody says, yeah, Jeff, I drive a Mercedes 550. Terrific. Wow, that's a $90,000 car. That's incredible. I'm just curious, why didn't you buy a 1975 Honda Accord? They run forever. They're comfortable. They're good cars. You can pick one up for like $300. And I can, excuse me, I can promise you this: my $300 Honda Accord takes me just about to the same places as your Mercedes does, just about as fast. Here on Long Island, we have a main drag called the Long Island Expressway, which is known as the world's longest parking lot. I can get into the city in my Honda Accord about as quick as you can in your Lamborghini. But by the way, my point is never, ever that somebody wasted $90,000 on a car. God bless them for having the money to spend and the good taste to buy an incredible car like that. It's not about that. It's about, why did they buy that? It's because they saw the value. They saw the value in owning a new car as opposed to an older car, a Mercedes as opposed to a Honda. And by the way, when I ask them why they spent $90,000 on a car, they've got great reasons. I feel safer in a new car. I like that new car smell. I like to impress my neighbors. Whatever the reasons are, they're not wrong. It's just that they saw the value. So we, as salespeople, have absolutely positively got to understand the value that we bring to the table and to be able to effectively communicate it to the prospect. Because if we understand it, but the prospect doesn't get it, they're not going to buy. If I could poll you right now, I'd ask you, how many of you have walked out of a sales situation without the order, scratching your head, going, I don't understand. Things were going so well. Why didn't they buy? I'll tell you why they didn't buy. Either they didn't trust you because there was no relationship, or they simply didn't see the value. And one of the things that you might want to do an exercise, and by the way, you're going to have access to this. I think this is being recorded. In fact, I know it is. And also I supplied DRCI with the deck. They can send you this entire deck, so you'll have this stuff. A great exercise to do is fill in the blanks at the end of these sentences. People do business with us because the things that set us apart from our competition are, and even though we're not always the least expensive option, people choose us because. If you can fill in the blanks at the ends of those sentences, you're on your way to being able to express the value of what you have to do. By the way, I love that last one. Even though we're not always the least expensive option, people choose us because. In fact, I use that in my brief commercial. I always end it with, by the way, even though we're not always the least expensive option, and we're not, people choose Jeff Goldberg and Associates because when we leave, their salespeople get more appointments with decision makers. They have a shorter sales cycle, and they just plain close more business more profitably. So you've got to understand the value that you bring to the table and establish a relationship. Otherwise, nobody's going to buy from you. Now, here are the keys to selling. Most people believe that sales is about being a great presenter and a strong closer. Now, I know how to do both. I'm a professional presenter. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I got certified. I'm now a certified virtual presenter. I'm doing a virtual presentation right now. I'm really good at presenting, and I know how to strong close. I used to sell $2,000 sets of encyclopedias to people who wanted them but had no idea how much they cost until I got there. I know how to strong close. I don't need to anymore, by the way. I don't teach strong closing. I teach people how to close, but you don't need to push people into anything. In fact, the last thing you want to be is pushy when you're selling. Think about this. If I physically push against you, what are you going to do? I'll answer it for you. You're going to push back. And that's the last thing we want. We don't want sales to be adversarial. What we want to be is the good hands people. We want to put our arms around people and let them know, in a human resources approved way, of course. We want to let them know we're on your side. We're here to help you. In fact, my belief is the key to selling is really serving. Our job when we're selling is to serve others. I know that sounds kind of hoity-toity and maybe a little altruistic. Don't get me wrong. I like getting paid for what I do. But my job is to serve others. My job is to help both individuals and organizations sell more effectively and increase their sales so they can all feed their families. So the keys are not being a great presenter or a strong closer. The first one is asking the right questions. If you want to be a better salesperson, the number one key is that you've got to be a great question asker. We already talked about the type of questions that you should be asking. The type of questions that you should be asking are the questions that uncover for you what makes sense to your prospect about what you have to sell them. So the best salespeople are always the best question askers. The second thing that a great salesperson has got to be, and by the way, most salespeople, and this is a technical sales training term, most salespeople suck at this, and that is listening. Most salespeople believe we get paid to talk. We don't. I get paid to talk, but not when I'm selling. When I'm selling, I get paid to ask questions and listen to the answers and then provide solutions. So we've got to be great question askers. Most of the sales process should be involved in us asking questions and having a conversation with our prospects. In fact, I call my selling skills program conversational selling skills because it's all about having great conversations. So you've got to be able to ask the right questions, listen actively to the answers, and the third key to selling is you must share great stories. And there's a particular type of story that I teach salespeople to ask, and it's called a verbal proof story, VPS, verbal proof story. A verbal proof story is a story about somebody else, like you, Mr. or Ms. Prospect, who by doing business with us lived happily ever after. Excuse me. Somebody else like you who by doing business with us lived happily ever after. The reason a verbal proof story is so important in the sales process is because our prospects, your prospects and my prospects, all have a wall built up between them and us. When you go into somebody's office or they come into yours, they come into your store, or you go into theirs, there's a wall built up between the prospect and the salesperson. And I say that wall is made of bricks. And on our side of the wall, the prospect has hung a sign, and that sign says, I'm not buying anything from you. And if I do buy something from you, it sure is not going to be today. Well, there's a reason that that wall is built there. And that's because excuse me, people have a built-in defense mechanism against buying, and the defense mechanism is they don't want to make a bad decision. And the way our brain science works is we are wired up to think negatively in a buying situation. What could go wrong? Maybe I'm better off just sticking with what I've got. Maybe nothing is better off than buying something. What if I make a wrong decision and my boss thinks poorly of me and I don't get the next raise? What if I get fired? What if I own the company, I make a bad decision and things go to heck? Well, we've got to help people break down the wall of that built-in defense to people buying stuff, that people have to buying stuff or investing in things. And the way we do that is by telling them about somebody else like them who by doing business with us lived happily ever after. It's why testimonial letters are so important. Better yet, testimonial videos. If you go to my website, jgsalespro.com, you'll see on many of the pages, there are videos of my clients saying nice things about me. I find that incredibly useful because the rest of the stuff on the website is nice stuff I say about me. Now, why should you trust me? Now, you should because I'm a trustworthy person, but I'm also a salesperson, which means most people think I'm not trustworthy. So, excuse me, anything I would be saying is suspect because I have a vested interest in people believing the things on my website because that's how I make a living. I want them to use my services, buy my products. So I have a vested interest and people know that. So they have a built-in resistance to buying. But when I tell you a story about, you know, your situation reminds me of XYZ company. They also had 18 salespeople. The salespeople were not that great at getting appointments. Once they went on appointments, they were pretty good at getting people about halfway through the sales process, but they couldn't really close business. So I did some consulting for them for about 30 days. I spoke to all the stakeholders. I spoke to management. I interviewed each and every salesperson. Then I put together a training program. We did 2.5 days of training over a 3-week period. And then I coached them every 2 weeks for 6 months. Now, and what happened was in the first 45 days, they got 17% more first appointments. And by the end of the 6 months, they were closing 22% more business. Well, if I tell you a story like that, it helps you break down that brick wall for yourself, because I can't break it down for you. And we want our prospects to uncross their arms and open up a little bit and say, oh, you know what? If I make this decision to do business with Jeff or Ashley or Ken or Jessica, maybe that is a good idea. So you've got to ask the right questions, listen actively to the answers, and share great stories. We already talked a little bit about selling value instead of price, and I cannot emphasize that enough. We tend to not focus on the value. One of the weakest things a salesperson can possibly do, by the way, is drop price. You know, the question that we often get, I know I get it regularly, is, can you do any better on the price? And the weak salesperson gives you one of these. Absolutely. I'm going to take care of you. Well, I'd much prefer it. And the way I teach salespeople to sell is, let's build up the value. One of the things that I hear pretty regularly when I'm speaking to prospects on the phone is, Jeff, we'd love to do sales training, or we'd love to bring in a consultant, but we just don't have it in the budget. And my response is always this: budget? We're not up to talking about your budget. In fact, we're nowhere near talking about your budget. Why don't we just get together and see if you like what we have to offer? That way, when your budget opens up, you'll think of us. See how I'm relaxing you, my prospect, in saying, don't worry about buying from me now. We'll talk about that later on. Let's just get together and see if there are any possibilities. And that relaxes people. Now, here's why I'm telling you this, that I cannot tell you how many times I've had a president, a CEO, or a vice president of sales tell me over the phone or via email, we don't have the budget for this, agree to a meeting with me, and then the next thing you know, we're doing business. Why? Because I'm the greatest salesperson that ever walked the face of the planet? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm really good at establishing the value in doing business with me. I help people get more appointments with decision makers. That's a pretty good value. I help them have a shorter sales cycle. My prospects like that. I help them close more business more profitably. That's value. So we need to clearly express the value. And I believe you should always deliver way more value than your customers expect. Salespeople tend to overpromise and underdeliver. I underpromise and overdeliver. That's how you create raving lunatic fans that want to refer you. Now, one of the most basic concepts in sales that even tenured salespeople rarely understand is the difference between features and benefits. And for those of you who are experienced in sales, I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but I do want to give you a very brief definition of the difference between the two. Features are what something is or what something has, is or has. Benefits are what something does. Features are what it is or has. Benefits are what it does. People buy what things do. They don't buy the is or the has, they buy what things do. And the perfect example is an automobile. If we were actually able to have a conversation right now, I would pick one of you and ask you, do you drive a car? And I'm betting that almost all of you have some type of an automobile, whether it's a truck or a car or an SUV or something else. And I would then ask you this: does your car have tires? And usually when I ask that question, people laugh and they go, yes, of course my car has tires. And the next question would be, did you buy your car because it has tires? That's where people usually stop and think when I ask that question. They go, no, I didn't buy my car because it has tires. And my point is always, of course you didn't buy your car because it has tires. You would not have bought a car that didn't have tires, but you didn't buy your car because it has tires. Tires are a feature of a car. And then I would ask you the same thing about the steering wheel. Did you buy your car because it has a steering wheel? And we would go through the same process where you'd go, no, I didn't buy it because it has a steering wheel. I wouldn't have bought a car without a steering wheel, but I didn't buy it because it has a steering wheel. A steering wheel is a feature of a car. And then I would ask you this question: why did you buy a car? Or why did you lease a car? Not the particular model that you leased or bought, but why did you buy a car? And the point we always get to eventually is, I bought, leased, or rented an automobile because it allows me to get from point A to point B without me having to walk, take a train, take a bus, take a taxi, ride a bike, take a helicopter, or anything else. The benefit of owning, leasing, or renting an automobile is I get from point A to point B without having to do one of those other things. Here's another quick example. Excuse me. I live in a beach house a block from the ocean on Long Island. About 3 weeks ago, I walked into my garage and carried a big ass air conditioner from my garage and put it in my front window because I don't have central air. When I put that air conditioner in the front window, it prevents me from opening and closing the window to get a nice ocean breeze, which sometimes happens. It also doesn't look great from the street, but the reason I have an air conditioner in my window is I want to be cool when it's hot out. The benefit of having the air conditioner in my window is I get to be cool when it's hot and humid out. So when we're presenting, we've got to make sure that we're focused on the benefits. Of course, we're going to talk about features, but we should always tie the feature to its corresponding benefits. And by the way, the easiest way to do that is talk about a feature and then finish the sentence about it with, and here's what that means to you, or and here's how that helps you, or and here's what that does for you. Whatever comes after those sentences is the benefit. And you don't want to make the assumption that your prospect clearly understands the benefit just because you think they do. You need to explain it to them. I would rather take the risk on insulting a prospect's intelligence by clearly explaining the benefit than take the risk of them not seeing the benefit, because that's the situation when you're going to walk away going, damn, things seem to be going so well. Why didn't that deal close? You see, prospects are looking for the WIFM, and that's what that acronym at the bottom stands for, W-I-I-F-M. We call that in sales the WIFM, and it stands for what's in it for me. Your prospects, just like my prospects, are constantly thinking about, so what? Where's the WIFM? They may not be consciously thinking, where's the WIFM, because they may not know that term, but they are looking for the WIFM. What does this do for me? And if we can't clearly explain that, we're not going to close business. Now, this next concept applies to any type of economy, but especially a challenging economy. And when I do live programs, which I haven't done for several months, but I hope to sometime in the near future again, because I love being in front of audiences, there's always somebody who comes up to me at the beginning of a program and wants to shake my hand and tell me how excited they are and how much they love training. And Jeff, I can't wait because I know today's going to be great. And if I learn one thing, just one thing, it's going to be worth it. That's an old saying. If you read a book or you go to a seminar and you learn one thing, it was worth it. And I always say this, if you only learn one thing from spending a day with me, you got ripped off and I shouldn't have gotten paid. And then I always jokingly say to the boss, I'm still getting paid, but I shouldn't have gotten paid. If people only learn one thing from me, I didn't do my job properly. But if they did only learn one thing from me, this thing that I'm going to talk about right now is the thing I would want them to walk away with. And it's called the Best Next Action Step Philosophy, or the BNAS. And it's very simple. The Best Next Action Step Philosophy says, you never, ever leave a meeting or a phone call without setting up the next meeting or phone call right then and there. This is guaranteed to do two things. One, it's going to let you know who's interested in doing business with you and who's not. Who's potentially interested in doing business with you and who's not. And it's going to shorten your sales cycle. Think of it this way. Excuse me. Most salespeople end a sales call like this. Well, Steve, you've given me a lot of great information today. Here's what I think we should do. I'd like to go back to my office, think about everything we've talked about, put together a proposal for you. Once I've got that done, I'll give you another call. I'll set up another appointment with you. I'll come back and show you the proposal. And that way you'll have all the information you need to make an intelligent decision whenever you're ready. Sound good? And the Steve in that example always says, sounds great. Why does it sound great? Because Steve didn't agree to anything other than me going back to my office, doing a bunch of work and trying to get an appointment from him again. He didn't say he'd take my call. He didn't say he'd agree to the appointment. He said, yeah, Jeff, you want to go write up a proposal and call me? Have fun. Have at it, my friend. A better way would be, hey, Steve, you've given me a lot of great information today, and here's what I think we should do. I'd like to go back to my office and think about everything we've talked about. I'd like to put some ideas on paper, an outline of ideas, and I'd like to come back and show you that outline of ideas on how we can increase sales at your company next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. How does that sound, Steve? Well, when Steve agrees to meet me next Tuesday at 3 o'clock with my proposal, my outline of ideas, by the way, I never call it a proposal. It is, but I call it an outline of ideas because a proposal is kind of a very salesy term, and I don't want people to be building up their defenses against me. So it's an outline of ideas. I'd like to come back and show you the outline of ideas next Tuesday at 3. When Steve agrees to that, the one thing he's told me is Steve is interested. Steve, in my case, is the president, CEO, or a business owner, or a vice president of sales, all very busy people. And if Steve already gave me some of his valuable time and now agrees to give me more of his valuable time, Steve's interested. We may not end up doing business, but Steve's interested. And for me, a salesperson who wants to protect my time like a mother lion protects her cubs, and I do, I've only got so much time each day and each week to do what we do, which is sell. Steve wants to protect his time too. So when he agrees to give me more of his valuable time after he's already given me some of his valuable time, he's shown me he's interested. The other thing I've done is I've shortened my sales cycle. Because if I didn't get the meeting before I left, and I did go back and write my proposal, and Steve was interested, I would then call Steve and try to set up the appointment. Would I get Steve on the phone? Maybe, maybe not. And I'd leave him a voicemail, most likely. And he'd call me back. Would he get me? If he calls me right now, he won't, because I'm on the line with you guys. And we'll probably trade voicemails back and forth over a couple of days and maybe even over a couple of weeks. And then once we get each other on the phone and try to set an appointment to get together to show Steve my fantastic proposal, it could easily be another week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks before two busy executives like Steve and I can find it in a time in our calendar to get together. Whereas if I'm in Steve's office or on a video conference or a phone call with Steve and I set the appointment for next week, I just save probably, I estimate every time I do that, I save 3 weeks off my sales cycle. The best next action step philosophy should be an unbreakable rule in your organization. It is in mine. I never leave a meeting or a phone call without getting the next meeting or phone call. And if I don't get it, I know this is probably not a real prospect, at least not right now. A couple of final things. You should be amazingly responsive to your clients and prospects. It's too easy right now to go on the internet and find somebody else who does what you do. You sell advertising, lots of people sell advertising. You're a banker, there's lots of banks out there. You do sales training and sales coaching, there's lots of people like me. In my opinion, not too many is good. There are a few, but there's plenty of people who say that they do it. So be amazingly responsive, because if you're not, they're going to let their fingers do the walking, not in the yellow pages, which for those of you who are too young used to be a saying, but they can go online and just Google sales trainers or how do I increase my advertising, or whatever it is you're trying to do. Also, I urge you to do this personally and tell your sales teams, if you've got one, return all phone calls and emails as quickly as you possibly can. I often have people argue with me saying, you don't want to be overeager. I think you do want to let people know you're incredibly responsive. My guarantee to anybody I work with, and it's absolutely true, is I return all phone calls and all emails within 24 hours, no matter where I am in the world, no matter what I'm doing. If you send me an email and you haven't heard back from me within 24 hours, now it may be, hey, I'm in London training a sales team over there and I'll be back next week and get back to you then. That could be the message. But if you haven't heard from me, if you've left me a phone call or an email within 24 hours, it means I didn't get it. You should leave that message again from here, send me another email. And please handle customer service issues with a smile. I know you spoke with my friend and associate who I highly respect, Randy Bussey, who is the queen of customer service. Handle customer service issues with a smile. If you don't, your competition is there waiting to take your business away from you. Attitude. I have a friend who wrote a book called Attitude is Everything. I don't think attitude is everything, but certainly it's important, especially right now when things are so challenging. So either avoid, which is probably not possible, avoid negatives, but certainly eliminate them as much as you possibly can. Should you be watching the news, whatever station you like to watch, that's up to you. Yeah, you should be up to date and know what's on, but you can't be watching it all day. If you're Tony Robbins, who I consider the greatest motivational speaker of our time with this great positive attitude, I believe Tony Robbins himself couldn't stay positive if he's watching the news, reading online all day long. Stay current, but eliminate as many negatives in your life as you possibly can, and that includes negative people. I co-authored a book called Leverage Your Laziness, and in there we talk about getting rid of toxic vampires, the people who suck the life out of you. Get rid of those people and surround yourself with positives. I start every day by going through a litany of things I'm grateful for and things I'm thankful for, things I feel positive about. And I set up my day that way. And we all have to remember that no matter how bad things get, this too shall pass. The great motivational speaker, Les Brown, says, you must tell yourself that no matter how hard it is, or no matter how hard it gets, I am going to make it. This is a group that I just formed about a month ago. It's on Facebook and now it's also on LinkedIn. It's called the Sales Pro Network. I put this together as a place where salespeople, whether you own a company, you're a salesperson who's employed by somebody else, you sell as all of what you do for a living, or even just part of it is your job as business development. It's a place where salespeople can come and ask questions and get answers, get coaching. I'm on there constantly. I have other sales trainers that I respect who I've invited there. And I keep getting asked, why would you want your competition to there? Why don't you just want to be the guy? It's because I want to serve the sales public and elevate the profession of sales. We salespeople tend to have a bad reputation, and often for good reason, because a lot of people don't act with integrity. They don't truly serve their customer. But the Sales Pro Network is a place where salespeople can get answers, share success stories, share their challenges, get some advice and coaching. And also every 2 weeks, I do a Facebook Live interview with somebody who can help salespeople. This week, I'm interviewing a marketing and social media expert who's going to tell salespeople how to be better marketers for themselves. Last week, I interviewed one of my biggest competitors here on Long Island, who's a brilliant sales trainer and does a fantastic job. So if any of you are interested, just go to Facebook. The link is up at the top. You'll have this presentation, or you can just type it, go to Facebook and type in the Sales Pro Network, and you'll find it there. Same thing on LinkedIn. I'd love to have you there, and I'd love to have you actively participating. Here's my contact information. I'm not seeing any questions coming up, so unless somebody's got a question right now and you'd like to either raise your hand so that Lindsay can see it, or you'd like to type a question into the chat box, we're going to end in a couple of moments. My contact information is here, including my email address and my phone number. And the reason I'm giving you that is because of this. I'm going to make you an invitation. By the way, there are two types of invitations. If I ever gave you my business card, it would show you my address, because I work out of my home, which means you've got my home address. And if you have my home address, I could easily say, hey, if you're ever in Long Beach, stop on by, knock on the door, we'll walk down to the beach, maybe we'll watch the sunset together, have some cocktails, talk sales, or talk whatever you want. Except if most people showed up at my door, you know, they'd probably hear me telling the dog to be quiet, telling the kids, shh, be quiet, act like you're not here. That's one type of invitation. The other type of invitation is a true invitation, and that's what I'm giving you. If you've got a sales issue that I can help you with, or a sales management issue that I can help you with. I'm only an expert in two things in this life: sales and sales management. Maybe three. I've turned out to be a very good father after 19 years in one case and almost 18 years in the other two cases. But that's not what I give advice on. If you have a question about selling or sales management that I can help you with, feel free to call me. And I'm not talking about charging you. Obviously, if you call me 5 times a day, every day, we're going to have to talk about me getting compensated. But I truly believe that givers get. And if I can help you with a sales situation that helps you close a deal or get a promotion or something like that, it's my pleasure to do so. My website is jgsalespro.com. There's some decent information about what I do on there, as well as my blogs. I do training, coaching, and outsourced sales management. And since I'm not seeing any questions, I'm going to finish up by saying this. First of all, thank you to Lucy Rosen for inviting me, and to Lindsay Doyle for all the help she gave me in making sure this went almost as flawlessly as it possibly could. We had a few technical difficulties for which I apologize, but I hope this was a valuable time for you. And thank you so much to the DRCI for having me today. And I'll leave you with this thought. One of the things I teach, excuse me, my coaching clients, and really all my clients, to do is to manage their time more effectively. In fact, whenever I go around the room in the beginning of a seminar or a workshop and I ask people what their biggest challenge is, 50% of the answers are always time management. There's simply not enough hours in the day. So as somebody who teaches others how to manage their time more effectively, I completely understand the value of time. And I can't begin to tell you how much I honor and appreciate the time and attention you've given me today. I consider it a blessing. I hope you got some value out of this today. And I thank you very, very much. Thank you so much. Go out and have a magnificent day. Thanks, everyone.